Hello, I'm Helen Martin. I'm here with our team at the Northeast Georgia History Center. We will be interviewing a veteran today as a part of the Library of Congress American History Folklore Center for Veterans.
Well, Jeff, we're here today to conduct an interview. Jeff is a United States Air Force veteran. We're located here in Gainesville, Georgia, at the History Center on the campus of Brenau University. The date is important for the date period. The date is exactly the 6th of September, 2025. And with us today we have Mike, who's our videographer. We have Helen Martin, who will be taking all of the notes and coordinating your entire package for the Library of Congress. And I think we've covered most of those details required. Jeff, and since I don't really know you completely well enough yet, maybe you could start out by telling us when and where you were born, and maybe your siblings, and a little bit about your family in your earliest days.
I was born in Chicago, Illinois, 1946. And after I was born, my parents moved out to Woodstock, Illinois. And when I was 5 years old, my father at that time died, and my mother and my sister at the time relocated to Hinsdale, Illinois. And a couple of years after that, my mom remarried, and we moved to Long Beach, Indiana, just down the coast of Lake Michigan. My stepfather was a businessman in the textile industry, and when I was 10 years old, the city of Gainesville, Georgia made him an offer he couldn't refuse. They basically conducted a bond issue and built a plant for him. Air conditioned, was the first air conditioned manufacturing plant in Gainesville at that time. 1956.
It's hard to refuse.
Right. So I had never heard of Georgia as a 10-year-old boy from Chicago, born in Chicago, and he got the family around the kitchen table one night and said, well, guess what, kids, we're moving to Georgia. And I said, wow, where's that? So he got out a Rand McNally atlas and pointed out where Georgia was in Gainesville. And in August of 1956, we flew down to Atlanta on an Eastern airline and then drove to Gainesville. And really, of course I had 3 or 4 siblings at the time, and we really liked it. It was a shock from Chicago, but it was a very pleasant city and a great place to grow up. We went to local elementary school, graduated from Gainesville High School. So that's how I got to
So maybe that's why you don't have that total Georgia accent.
Right.
Still, well, that's interesting. It's quite a background for a family growing up like that. How do you think that did affect your life as a just that from 0 to 5? You had quite a bit of movement. How do you think that affected you?
Well, I obviously had to deal with it, but since my mother remarried and my stepfather had at least 4 other children. We had a combined family. We just had to learn to get along together. And I was very close with my older brother and my younger sister, so we kind of hung out together, and it wasn't such a shocking experience to move that far away from home because we had each other, and we made friends in Gainesville real quickly.
You how old were you when you graduated from Gainesville High School?
I was 18. Gainesville High School.
And did you think about the service then, or did you immediately go in, or wait to work a while? Or?
No, I was. My immediate thought was college. I went to Young Harris College for 2 years, and then the University of Georgia.
And you graduated when?
1968.
Bulldog.
Yes. And then I started graduate school at Georgia State University.
And then what? Let's go. That's good. We got that pretty well covered as the early days. Unless you can think of anything else you'd like to include in there, maybe anything with coaching or high school or anything at all.
Well, in high school, I was on the tennis team. And as a matter of fact, I was looking through some records for this interview, and I found my tennis letter from 1964. And so I love tennis. I played on the team, and I was in the band. And during football season, we went to all the games. Actually, we took a train trip up to Washington, D.C. for the Cherry Blossom Festival when I was a sophomore in high school. The following year, the band went to New Orleans for Mardi Gras. And some of the townsfolk here in Gainesville were kind of leery of, well, we shouldn't send our high school kids to Mardi Gras. They could get in real trouble. But no, it worked out very well.
What instrument do you play?
Trombone.
Trombone?
Yeah.
Front row?
Have to be.
Okay, so now we're going to be moving a little bit more towards just prior to when you went into the service, let's say a month before, or even a little more. What were you thinking, and what caused the process to get you into the military?
I was, and I will tell you, as you remember, during those times and during the Vietnam War, the mid to late 60s, it was not a popular war, and there was this thing called the draft, and I assumed incorrectly that the war would be over when I graduated from college, because it had been going on for at least 4 or 5 years. Well, it was just getting going. I was actually drafted. And here's the thing. I was in graduate school. This was before the lottery. And I had friends who had PhDs in, well, one in French and the other one in English, who were also drafted, and they were married. And it was a tough time back then. I mean, it was hard. It was not easy. So I had a friend who was an Air Force recruiter in Athens. And I asked him, I said, what can I do with my degree in the Air Force? And he gave me some really good advice to take the language test when I got to basic training. I took this International Standard Language Test. I must have done really well, because the first sergeant came up to me about 3 days later and told me, well, you've been selected to go to Russian language school at Syracuse University for a year. And I thought I'd died and gone to heaven, because I was majored in Russian at the University of Georgia, and history. It was a double major. So I couldn't believe my good fortune. Just, right off the street, serendipitously, here I am being sent to Syracuse along with 75 other airmen.
Did they skip you right by basic training then?
No, I was in basic.
You did go to
I did the whole basic
training
at Lackland. And 2 weeks after basic, we were flown up to Syracuse to the Air Force detachment at Syracuse University. They were teaching Polish, Hungarian, Russian.
Golden opportunity.
Oh, it was fabulous to be scooped up like that and put in that environment. Right. We had native-speaking Russians who were determined to teach us Russian so that we could get their country back. And they were very patriotic towards America. Expressed patriotic feelings to the U.S. And these were Russians. So I graduated from language school in end of November 1969, and was transferred down to Goodfellow Air Force Base in Texas.
So much for missing the Vietnam War then, right?
Right. The school at Goodfellow composed of Air Force people, Army, Navy, and Marines. We were all in that, working on the espionage version of what we were going to be doing with our careers.
Right. Well, that is not unusual. I have interviewed for Helen and also for others, several tried to wait it out. A good friend of mine up into the doctorate level at MIT came out and was a clerk typist at Fort Dix. But he didn't get sent over though. And he did his time, and he did his 6 years, so you're not unusual like that. There's several of them that did want to get that great education and went on,
Mhm.
but did get the draft and got hit, or avoided it by joining a guard or something. So it's unusual, and and you found out you might have really enjoyed that tour up there. You love that Syracuse training, I'll bet.
Oh, I did. It was priceless. I couldn't afford that. We had we had a meeting with our first sergeant, who was the admin NCO for the school, and told us that in 1969, even that what we were doing would have cost around $40,000 if you were a civilian, room and board, living in Syracuse, taking those courses 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Probably even getting TDY pay.
Probably.
Let's put you back in basic just a minute, Lackland.
Right.
Give me one example of anything about an instructor or a drill master that you might remember that caught your attention from basic.
From basic. Well, I even remember my drill sergeant's name, Staff Sergeant, Tech Sergeant Malloy.
He must have made an impression then if you remember his name.
Yeah. He was all business. We had PT every day, Air Force history. I'm trying to remember the drill at the end of the day. Followed a good routine for the time I was in basic.
The importance of mission.
Importance of mission, obstacle course. It would help to be Lackland at that time. The Air Force, the basic training base was situated adjacent to Kelly Air Force Base. So you could see at that time, the B-52s take off and landing as you were drilling. So you kind of thought, man, that's the real Air Force right there.
Well, let's jump ahead now to, you're through the language school, and now they're going to have to use you somewhere important.
Right.
What's your first assignment?
My first assignment after a good fellow,
After all of your training.
after all of my training was back at Kelly Air Force Base. They had a surplus of folks at the time and they were working through it. So I was just basically filling in for admin duty. About 2 weeks after I was there, second lieutenant came by our group and said, look, I know you guys have all this training and you don't feel like you're using it, or you're not really using it. I need volunteers for flight duty.
Oh.
And of course every hand went up because that's really what the
Yeah.
plum assignment. And I was chosen. And from there, I was sent flew up to Fairchild Air Force Base for survival school. That encompassed orienteering out in the great forests of the Northwest.
What month was it?
This was in June.
So you had some hot weather then.
It was hot, definitely hot, yes.
Hiking?
Hiking, orienteering, that's going from point A to point B without any trails, navigating by compass.
Get a little interrogation?
Now that came, yes, that was the POW
Yeah.
portion of it. And that
How
was,
long did they stick you in a black box?
well, the black box was about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, if I understand your question correctly. And then you went back to your cell.
The small one?
The small one, right.
Oh, okay. And the cell was probably like a closet.
It was small, yeah, the cell was, yes.
A lot of music playing on you?
A lot of North Vietnamese music, or Vietnamese music.
I'm sure they were getting you ready for a place that you didn't want to go for a while.
That's right.
Well, okay, you got through that. So you're good thing in case you get captured, right?
That's correct.
And you were now assigned to a flying unit. What kind of airplane?
RC-135,
Out of what base?
out of Eielson Air Force, 6985th Security Squadron.
Is it possible for you to discuss that mission?
Oh yeah,
Go ahead and do that if you don't mind.
I was my position on the plane was to intercept SAM missile communication between the missile launch site and the filter center. And as we were in doing our mission, I was listening into these sites, and if I detected any hostile reporting from the missile site itself, I was to notify the pilot. And I intercepted Russian navigation from, again, they tracked us on their radar.
Yeah.
and they fed those coordinates over an open mic to their filter center, and I could listen in. And so I had a map of where we were flying and a grease pencil, and I was plotting our position and reporting to the pilot, because it's one thing to know where you are the way you see it. It's quite another thing to know where the Russians think you are. And so we're on the international border, maybe 14 miles off the coast, and if they thought we were straying, they would have shot us down.
From the time you took off there at Eielson until you landed, how many hours were you up?
Depending on the mission, the short mission would be the East Siberian Sea, would last about 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
A long mission would be flying over the pole, going through 3 aerial refuelings.
That's a long mission.
It's going down to the Barents Sea and flying around. There's a strip of land that comes out called the Novaya Zemlya, the new land. That's a peninsula sticking out into the Barents Sea.
Right.
And flying in that, there's several major Soviet submarine bases. Polyarny was one.
Out of curiosity, did the flight crew up front know what you were doing in the back, or was it off limits?
They had an idea. I mean, you fly with your front end crew long enough.
Yeah. They kind of knew. They had to go to the bathroom, so they took a look.
Right.
Right. So in the back, how big was the booth you sat in while you were doing all this?
I was a chair typically like this, and you had your parachute helmet on the seat,
Right.
and you could swivel to your desk. This desk came out. You had a bank of recorders. At that time, it was not digital; it was all analog tape recorders.
Right.
And so maybe two reels, and you could record that way, and then you would.
Did you ever know where that information went?
Well, yeah, actually, it went back to Squadron in Eielson, where we transcribed what was on the tape.
Do you know where it went from there?
Defense Intelligence Agency.
Okay. And then we'll probably stop right there, I guess. Is a good idea, right?
Okay.
Okay, I don't want to get into that one.
Right.
That part of it. When you were, so that was, did you ever get intercepted by a Russian MiG?
Yes, several times. Many times, actually.
Got a good look at it.
It was routine. They would come up, and I wasn't near a vantage point where I could really see, but I could hear them. They were flying right on top of us, maybe 25.
Well, did you also have fighter escort then?
No, we had no fighter. We had no protection at all.
So you just unarmed reconnaissance.
We were unarmed. Yes. The AMS, the mission supervisor, had at the time, a .38 pistol revolver, which wouldn't have, I don't think, done much good. But we were unarmed, basically.
Do you think the aircraft was ever in trouble in any way with engine fires or anything like that, decompressions or anything?
On my missions, I was very fortunate not to encounter that, but a friend of mine, a buddy of mine, was on a mission where, coming back from a mission, I think about 40 minutes outside of Eielson, coming in, they were basically on one engine. The very loud plane, the engines on these planes that I was flying upon were the old turbine engines, water-cooled engines. They were very loud, and you were very aware of that. But flying on one engine, it was very quiet. And they went from 4 engines to 1, and they thought they were going to have to ditch.
Pretty good pilots there.
They made it, yeah.
Well, what was the, if you're looking at, how many of you in the back were there?
Again, it depended on the mission. We were about, I would say, 15 to 18 personnel, plus 2 electronic warfare officers in the very back.
You know what's up front at all? A couple of pilots, maybe?
Oh, we had a crew of 2 pilots, 2 navs, 2 co-pilots, and then a maintenance shack.
So they probably really had to know where they were at all times.
Right. And we did not have satellite GPS. What we had was stellar navigation. And we had a rep from LTV, Ling, Temco, Vought, come on the plane when we were taking off, set up our stellar navigation, and one of the navs shot readings off the stars,
Yeah.
the old way.
That's right. Well, what do you think about when they were up there in the front, and they know the Russian MiGs are out there once, they're looking at them probably, right?
Yes.
Close enough to wave at them?
Yes. Actually,
Pictures?
several times.
Any pictures?
Pictures. I was up front once, and I wanted to. We weren't in the mission; we were refueling, and I just They didn't encourage taking cameras on the plane, but I did have a camera, and I promised I would only take it out the front. And I sat between the pilot, co-pilot, and I watched us refuel. The tanker way off in the distance. It took about 10 shots coming in, and finally the cone of the refueling nozzle was like inches, and then up and into the slide.
What was the exact squadron you were do you have a number on it?
6985th Security Squadron.
69 85th. Well, that's important for for Helen and her record purposes
Right.
later on. If you know, of course, if it isn't classified or anything. So 6591, 1 through 5, were out there somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and you were in the 5th. So did you ever fly anywhere close to, if you're allowed to say this, close to North Korea or Vladivostok?
Well, yeah, one of the missions entailed flying out and leaving the airspace of Alaska over Nome, the city of Nome, and then in 10 minutes, because you could see the position of the Soviet Union to Alaska, you were flying down the coast of the Kamchatka Peninsula, and Vladivostok is somewhere over there, so we weren't near it. We didn't.
What was their limit? 50 miles, maybe?
Whose limit?
Where they could, how far could that pilot orbit at the coastline? Maybe 100 or 50 miles out? Not any
We
close.
could skim the coastline 14 miles.
You could actually get in that. That's getting close.
Yeah.
And they didn't. They were painting you on radar probably, but you didn't get shot at or.
During my time,
was there any unfriendly interception? Really unfriendly?
the only unfriendly was the distance that the MiG, at that time, MiG-21, MiG-22s came on top of the plane,
Yeah.
our plane,
Tried to barrel roll over you or
Right.
something.
things like that.
Well,
The thing about the Soviet Air Force, you have to keep in mind, their pilots are controlled by a ground controller that will not let them do anything unless they're
That's right.
given the order to increase speed, lower speed.
They did shoot down a civilian airliner though.
That was in 1983. That was
Yeah.
when Yuri Andropov was head of the General Secretary, who was former KGB,
Right.
who was a real tough guy.
Did you ever get further on down towards North Korea?
No, not while I was working.
Because as you well know, they're not controlled at all. Some fool could take off from the ground and do anything he wants.
Right.
It'd be kind of crazy for him, but his government had no clue probably. Russians, you say, were under you knew they were under control.
Oh, yes, at that time they were, definitely.
Except for maybe if you, some guy, anybody ever get Russian get loose where he was kind of probably gone over and above board?
Actually, a pilot of a Russian plane?
Maybe one of them got a little loose and over.
I didn't experience that.
Pretty experience.
I was pretty busy
Yeah.
doing what I had to do.
Yeah,
I did not. Once we got into our assigned orbit area,
Yeah.
we would orbit for about 6 hours. I wasn't paying any attention other than what I had to do.
Okay, when did you leave Eielson? What year was that?
That was 1972, February.
And was that release time or
Yeah.
you got out then?
Well, I didn't get out of the Air Force. I was transferred to the National Security Agency.
So what total time did you have in the Air Force?
5 years, if you count.
So that
Yeah.
after that 3 or 4 up there at Eielson, you went off to Maryland?
Yes, Fort Meade, and then the Russian component of NSA was at the place called the Annex, the end of the runway of Baltimore Washington Airport, and it's still there.
Couldn't be more highly qualified after being at Elson to
Well,
go there.
the point you recall in the Vietnam War was ending, and during the latter part of 1972 and early 73, there was a big downsizing because budget constraints, and if you read the history of that era, our budget deficits, we got caught up in that, and so that's why I didn't stay.
How long were you at Fort Meade then?
About a year.
And then you got into the discharge
Yes.
of, and did you ever go back, or were you on recall or anything?
No, I was in the inactive reserve, but I went back to school.
Right. Well, that is some service, and quite dangerous and quite important. As far as the military goes, I don't think you could be doing much more important things. After you got out, came back to Georgia?
Yes, yes, I did. Came
And
back to
then-
Georgia.
What about your civilian career after that?
I worked for a while at the Omni Hotel Group during the day and went to school at night for accounting, management, and then my family had a business here in Gainesville. The building's still here, but we sold the business maybe 15 years ago, but it was the Warren Featherbone Company, textile apparel products.
All right. Tell us a little bit about your family. Your family now, your immediate family.
Well, I live in southern Hall County. My wife Margaret. I have a brother who lives in North Hall County, Bill, and he has two kids, one of whom works out at Nike in Portland, Oregon, and the other here in Roswell, Georgia. And I am retired, but I do very active with the University of Georgia in the apparel, the College of Fashion, not fashion, but help me with that. It used to be home ec, but now it's consumer products. And the reason I got involved with that because of the textile orientation of our business, apparel manufacturing. And
kind of like marketing.
Right,
in a
right.
way.
And we funded a chair of soft goods studies at UGA, and I'm on that board. And so actually I've been there maybe 15 years.
Well, that's a lot of data analysis.
Right.
Type thing. Collecting data.
Right.
Do you have any kids?
No.
So, and then, what about your wife? She's right
Margaret,
over there.
there she is.
Mark, you want to give us a little information about
Well,
your wife?
Margaret was actually in the same business that I later on was in the textile area. She represented a company, pretty big company, Kendall Corporation, and she called on customers, and we were one of them, and we met that way in the business, so to speak.
Well, that's an amazing life. You got any great information? If I was 19 and you approach you from Gainesville High, what would you tell that young man
Well,
or woman?
Right, and I've done this before too. I mean, I can pretty much tell if they're interested in the military, and I'm sure you can too as well. I've counseled several of my young friends in high school that the Air Force is the way to go if you're going in the military, and I don't mean to offend any of my other brothers and sisters in other branches of service, but from my own personal opinion. Especially if they're interested in flying, and many of them are. Their career goal is perhaps to be an airline pilot, and I said, there's no better way to do that than...
Maybe a flight nurse.
Right.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, I should do this because Mike over there at the videographer will always have interesting questions that I definitely would have forgotten. So Mike, you got any good ones today?
I always have a couple. I love these stories as well. I guess my first question would be, were there any stories of your time in service that you wanted to share that maybe Bob didn't ask about that you'd like to tell us about first?
Well, there was one interesting operational feature, and that was the actually pre-flight getting ready for a mission, perhaps a 14-hour mission.
Mm-hmm.
We usually had midnight briefings in the briefing room, and underneath administrative building, backlit. The lights would go out. The room was carpeted, and we all had leather armchairs. And the operations officer of the day would come in and relate to us what we were going to be doing for the next 14 hours. We were sanitized. In other words, all of identification was stripped from us, and we were given a Geneva Convention card, and that's it. And a little cellophane bag, like a baggie, heavy duty, with a water-soluble map of the area that we were going to be in, several bars of gold, a list of friendlies. If anything happened, we could get in touch if we even survived. Any questions? We'd have manual Morse operators, multi-channel, that was my job. Two electronic warfare officers were there. Maintenance. Pilots were already on the plane, and so the briefing lasted about a half an hour. Oh, we always had a picture of the U.S. ambassador, the current U.S. ambassador. Look at this picture. This is who you want to see if anything happens. And so we took a bus then, and sometimes it was 30, 40 below zero. We'd take a bus out to the flight line, stop by the in-flight kitchen, pick up really good takeout food. I must admit, they did a great job. Fried chicken, hard-boiled eggs, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. Get on the plane, get everything ready. And the interesting thing about Eielson Air Force Base, it has the longest runway in Air Force inventory. It's 15,000 feet.
Wow. It
was built for the B-36 right at the start of the Cold War. The big long-range, huge airplane that needed 15,000 feet to take off. Yeah, once we took off, we had little fuel on takeoff. We would go right into a refueling situation.
You know, Jeff, that reminds me, if before Jeff covers another one, if the worst happened from your training at Fairchild, and the worst did happen and you did have to go down in those icy waters, did you have those cold, any kind of wetsuit or anything to throw on quickly?
No, as a matter of fact, we had our Arctic gear on because it was
you had it
30, 40 below zero. And the parkas, to get on the plane, we would take the parka off.
13 hours in a wetsuit?
No, we didn't have a wetsuit. We did not have a wetsuit.
Oh, but it was...
There was unlikely that anyone would survive bailing out of a RC-135.
If you got caught, what was your cover story?
We were on weather and meteorological observation missions. Seriously.
I mean, you really were too.
Oh yes.
So you could say that with full truth, no matter how I put effort to torture you, right?
Right. Okay. And all of the paper that again, this was an analog era, was water soluble. And
true story.
You just put it in the head and flush it down. Everybody, it would just vanish.
And it would disappear.
Had one interesting incident happen. We were completing a mission, and you were not supposed to do this. When you went back to the galley and got a Coke and popped it, you're supposed to pop it back there and then let it fizz out and pour it in a cup and bring it back to your station if you were doing this. So one of my buddies got the Coke and brought it back to his station and popped it. It spewed all over his water soluble, all the mission notes.
Oh.
And he was furiously damping it out, but he lost half of his
take.
But it was on tape, so he could transcribe it when he got back.
I want to go back to that briefing that you talked about. That sounds like that probably took on a pretty serious tone.
Well, it did, because you weren't really sure. You knew where you were going to go. You knew how long it was going to last and what to take, but not exactly what to look for.
Right.
As you recall, back in those days, there was the Soviet Union, not Russia. Well, it was Russia, but the Soviet Union, the Warsaw Pact nations. And we would be very cognizant of the fact when the Warsaw Pact nations were doing war exercises, which included Arctic maneuvers, watch out for that. Just be on the lookout for anything out of the ordinary.
Right. And then you said you would have some gold with you. Is that
Right.
literal gold? So
Literal
if you needed
gold.
to buy, if
Right.
you went down and you needed to buy access somewhere.
Little, like they're selling at Costco.
Right.
I see advertised, but we had it first.
And then at some point when you went through training before the missions, you went through training on how to handle the POW. You were talking about the boxes and all that good stuff. Do you feel like that training prepared you for it? When you're in those briefings, was everything you learned
Yeah, the training
close
would, the training would really prepare you for stress.
Mm-hmm.
And not just the being caught, but any kind of stress from the mission. You can kind of think back to, I survived this, I can survive this,
Right.
That was tough. That POW camp was tough. Actually, I think back in the day when I went through that, we saw an expose on, was it 60 Minutes or one 2020 or one of the network shows actually did a show on this camp. And they couldn't get access to it, but they had interviews with people that, were there and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
When they took you from your closet cell
Yes,
to your interrogator,
right.
tell us how you entered the room and what you saw.
Well, when we-
I'm talking about an Air Force person who's there he's on our side, but he's not on your side right now.
First of all, let me explain. You don't go to the POW camp like, well, here we are, folks. Here's the POW camp. Have fun. It's nighttime, and you're back on the base, and the POW camp is miles away. At dusk, a bus comes by, picks you up, and drops you off at a field, and it's dark. And it's about a half-mile long stretch of field. And you can hear machine gun and machine guns going off, grenades, and you're to crawl under a concertina wire half a mile to get to the camp. So by the time you get to the camp, you're completely stressed out, worn out. You actually feel that you've been captured. And you're told, you've got to go to this spot. And it's like a hut, and it looks like a combination of the North Vietnamese and the North Koreans had got together and built this reception center. And you raise your hands and you go up to it and state your name as, in our case now, it was Social Security number, and they knew you were supposed to be there because they have a list of everybody coming through. But that's about it. And then they put a bag over your head and take you to your cell. So, in answer to your point, when you're out of the box and they take you to interrogation, you have a bag over your head, you're really not sure. And you've been up for 18 hours, so things are foggy. The interrogation was
When they took the bag off, what did you see?
a dank little room with men dressed in black with red stars on their cabin.
Oriental?
Pardon?
Was he Oriental?
No, it was Anglo. At the time I went through.
Other than some tough questions, which they knew all about, did they give you any waterboarding at the time?
No, none of that.
Didn't get that far.
No.
No stress, really.
Well, it was stressful. I mean, you really didn't need to be waterboarded because
Yeah.
it was tough. And the camp commandant was a fellow named Boris. And we would line up. And by that time, you're sleep deprived. You really don't know now, is this for real or not? Will we really get out of here, or is this something different? And Boris comes out in a black uniform, and he speaks like a Chechnyan. And he comes and grabs you. If you're next to a colonel, he'll grab you just like that and shake you. Shake the colonel in front of the enlisted men and throw him on the ground. And oh, this is real, by that time. So it was very effective.
Well, near the last day, how did you realize, being that deep in thinking it might be real?
All right,
How did you finally know everything was just fine?
at the end of the day, someone says, well, this is it. We're going to be let out. So we're lined up. Boris, the camp commandant, comes over. You have failed. You men are pathetic. We're going to send you back through. Put the bags over your head. You're going back for another 3 days. And you talk about despair. You start marching, and then the guards all disappear. And someone says, well, take the bag off your head. You take it off, and there's no one else around. The gates open, and it's over. But you're not aware of it being over until the very last moment.
Pretty interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And do you think it really prepared you for anything you're going to see in life later?
I hope
nothing could be that bad.
Nothing could be that bad. It would prepare you for the stress that you could receive.
Mike, anything else?
I have two other quick ones.
Right.
And I'm glad you got that training, and I'm glad you never had to use that training in real world scenarios. You said you spent a year at the NSA, I think, correct?
Right.
You didn't talk much about that. I know there are probably some things you wouldn't talk about, but what was that duty like?
Well, we were, like I said, at the Russian annex. Mm-hmm. We were not in the big building that you see in the pictures.
Right.
I started there, went through orientation there, and then was assigned to the annex, like I said, at the end of the Baltimore-Washington Airport runway. Mm-hmm. And basically transcribing tapes.
So some of the tapes that people were doing your previous job would provide, then you would transcribe them, what they got.
And again, this is pre-digital.
Right.
So the information coming in was on tape.
Reel to reel, probably.
Reel to reel. This was a while ago, so I'm sure I'm not spilling the beans on anything, but we had, and I wasn't doing this because I was a Russian linguist, but some of the Spanish linguists get these little tapes about the size of an apple. Mm-hmm. And they were made in Cuba on a backpack with somebody walking around, and you recall our relations with Cuba in the early 70s were not good, transcribing those tapes.
Interesting.
Which were smuggled out, by the way.
Right, that's why they were small, because they were in hidden recordings. One last question. You studied Russian in college at University of Georgia.
Right.
And then you did the linguist school, and then had the opportunity to use that skill in the Air Force. And you were talking about some historical things just a minute ago, some of the people that were in positions. I'm curious, with the current state, there's a lot going on, and I'm curious to hear what your current opinion or thoughts are about their position in the world and what's going on over there.
Well, in my experience dealing with the Soviet Union, there was a union of Soviet republics, and there was in the Moscow headquarters, everyone's familiar with the Politburo, mm-hmm. the Comintern, and that type of thing. There was a consensus as to how to govern the country in foreign relations. What bothers me now, and I'm concerned about, is one man in charge of everything.
And has been for a long time.
Mr. Putin, and he just didn't get that way. He started as a young man, being raised in the KGB, and seeing everything and working his way up, and now he's in total control. That's what scares me. Even in the old Soviet days, there was a committee, and working with committee, you can soften your edges a little mm-hmm. bit, but this is, I think, different.
I think there's even a picture of Putin when he was a young KGB agent shaking hands with Reagan, wasn't it?
That's right,
mm-hmm.
in Red Square.
Yeah. So you share the concern out there with what's going on today and what Putin,
I do.
How things are.
I do, yes. Don't know how we can resolve this, Ukraine, if that's the current situation.
Yeah, it's concerning to me as well. The only final thing I would have is it was a pleasure to listen to the interview today, and thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. Enjoyed discussing this with you.
Just out of curiosity, You have any advice for President Trump and what he might do in his next step? Since right now it looks like maybe nothing much happened over the meeting in Alaska.
No, it looks that way, but again, we're not privy to everything. I think the wise course might be to let the bureaucracy and Secretary of State, some of those folks, handle it from here and not get personally involved as much for a while.
As much as you listened in, do you think that 2 years of Russian war like that may have depleted their resources down to almost 30%? They're getting them from somewhere, but do you think they
But he can't
like we were really hurt in Vietnam, maybe?
Right.
Do you think they're really hurt as we were in
Well,
Vietnam?
when you're taking prisoners, dangerous criminals out of your prisons and putting them on the front lines, when you're resorting to that,
Right.
you're low on resources.
Maybe that's why he just visited China.
Maybe so, but I don't think the Chinese are willing to expend any currency on that situation.
Right. Isn't that interesting for the tape? I'm glad we got it because there's not a lot of people that'll be able to explain what you know about the Russian thought pattern. And we have it on tape. And I do want to thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
You've had a great career.
Thank you very much. It was
That
a
pretty
pleasure.
much ends the interview, Jeff.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Good stuff. So what do you think? How does that feel? Feels a little strange to be interviewed, I'll bet.
Yeah, it does. But it's good. It's good. It
Good.
really is.
I have a question. Thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
How did you choose Russian? Was it, you said a major or a minor?
Well,
or double major?
My
Double
career is, I look back on it, it's kind of serendipitous. Things happen. I don't know, I had to fulfill a language requirement at UGA, and all of my friends wanted the easy way out. They were taking Spanish. They weren't even taking French, they were taking Spanish, which in hindsight is pretty good considering we have so many Hispanic folks today. But I just wanted to try something different, so I took Russian, and I could tell my friends, hey, I'm taking Russian. But it was a fascinating course. It's very easy in a way. Every letter in the alphabet sounds. There's no silent consonants. You can, no problem with spelling because every letter sounds. It's just a very difficult grammar that we're not used to. But other than that, and great writers, the great Russian writer, Dostoevsky and Pushkin and Tolstoy, great thinkers. I mean, they're very deep thinking people. And it was very interesting at Syracuse, some of my professors, you talk to them and they put their hand on the chin and they say, well, it's very interesting. Let me think. It was just priceless. I had one who was at a goatee. It looked like Anton Chekhov, the little goatee and the mustache. And we had small classes, 10 to a classroom. And I had one instructor who would become very irritated if we didn't catch on right away. And he would say, like, Airman Whalen, and the word for airman was lochik. He said, lochik, idite daske, which means get to the blackboard and take dictation. So he was saying, and then he would say, faster, faster, must go like machine gun, these alliterations that they would use. Yeah, it was very interesting. A big Russian community in Syracuse, all of Rochester, Syracuse, Buffalo.
We were talking before the interview, we were talking about how much you guys like to travel, and this trip to Australia in 2 weeks is going to be exciting. Have you visited Russia?
No, as a matter of fact, I have not, and I'm not about to go.
Now is not the time, for sure.
I don't want to end up like Mr. Whalen did, going to a wedding 5 years ago and wound up in the Lefortovo prison and then in the archipelago.
I just talked to my daughter. She's in American Airlines and gets to travel free, and she's been everywhere. But I just talked her out of going to Russia because this kid will go anywhere, and I just, you can't tell your daughters much what to do, but I said, you are not going to Russia.
Yeah, that's a good move.
I didn't think about that, but
He's taking anybody.
You and I both know the KGB has a file on you. You went through Russian
I was
language school.
restricted.
You know they do.
I was restricted 5 years
They do.
after I got out of the service. I could not go to the Eastern Bloc countries.
I bet they still watch you real close.
Well,
if you
they
went
not only
today.
do
When
they
he
watch
got
us.
a discharge, he got a restriction.
Mhm.
He can't travel for 5 years to certain places. If he does, he goes to jail.
Tell them about Estonia.
Well, my wife and I happened to be in Estonia the week that,
Helsinki first.
well, we were in Helsinki, and then we took a boat over to Estonia, and it was the week of the currency collapse. They got rid of the ruble and were going to their own currency, and we saw probably the last glimpse of old Soviet era gloom and doom in downtown Estonia. Just little Trabants, two-stroke ice cream shops that couldn't serve ice cream because the machines weren't working, so it was soup, ice cream soup.
Oh,
Women's stores that had one item here, one item here.
really get a start view of
depressing.
start view of what that.
But the
community was like.
Estonians couldn't kick the Russians out fast enough after that.
I didn't want to put it into the interview, but I was telling you about this because it would be involving me. But this guy that my valedictorian in my class, high school, New
Yeah.
Jersey, brilliant son of a dentist, and he went to first he went into Amherst, then he went off to MIT,
Yeah.
and this wasn't to avoid the war. He just wanted to be educated. So then he went off to Carnegie Mellon, comes out all of this with a PhD, and the same thing happened. They sent it. Now he was obviously still available for the draft, and he didn't want to go over there and fight in some trench somewhere in the army. So what he did is joined the Guard and got sent to Fort Dix doing a menial junkie PhD, nothing job, and all of a sudden, like you, they find out he's got language skills. So he ends up, he's still enlisted, even though he could have been an officer, but he wasn't going in the military earlier. He flew for the 6091st
Mhm.
into North Korea. That's where, when I was in, that's where we flew into.
Into North
Se-
Korea? Was this
Not
during
always,
the Korean War?
depending if you were a volunteer. Most of the time, 14 to 50 miles off the coastline, orbiting.
Mhm.
But the problem was, like you said, the Russians were under control.
Yeah, they were.
They were not under control, and on the tape that I gave Helen, we did. The guys in the back could tell you the escape plan for your aircraft is to drop flaps in gear and go down from 35,000 to 5,000 in 2.5 minutes or less. That's your escape plan. Phoom. So, and the Russians that fly around they're pretty, and you can hear them talking. You hear everything. You hear where they're launched from, and they're not going to probably attack unless he's an idiot. But a North Vietnamese, most of the time they're okay, but then there's a screw loose in a couple of them, and that's why there were 3 shot down in the Lyndon Johnson era. They had the Pueblo. He did nothing. They had 2 shot down, unarmed, Navy and Air Force. And then I get there, and we're going there again because right up and down the coastline. But there were certain missions lower and faster inland, and you volunteered for those. Nobody had to go unless they wanted to. But he ends up in the back of the aircraft, listening to North Vietnamese. And the good news is, if they're listening so well, the guy told us when the guy was launching at us, we were still out there then. So what we did is turn the aircraft down real fast and real fast outward and ran that guy out of gas. And I put it on the tape for Helen. So the trick was to just run the fool out of gas. If you could outrun him. Now, we didn't get shot down. My whole time, I'll tell you this because you know these things. We were told during the advanced survival of cover storing that all that when Nixon took over, he was so torqued at those shoot downs. Well, I arrived right when he got to be president. Lyndon Johnson had 3 of them. 1 submarine, 2 aircraft, shot down, North Korean area. And we were told during the training that the process for recovery, that you didn't have to worry much about it anymore in North Korea. Well, it only happened once, but in North Korea, because he told them, if you shoot down 1 more aircraft of United States unarmed reconnaissance, I'm going to nuke you in Pyongyang. And I believe that the instructors that told us that had clearance enough to tell us it was real. Now, I don't know if they're lying. I doubt it. I think he would have done it. Now, we never had another one after. I did 4 more years. Never again. So I was telling Helen, presidents will define what we're doing.
Right.
So if you got a Lyndon Johnson, that's what happened. When we had a Nixon, that's what happened. And that's why I asked you about Trump, because I'm kind of glad he's, a lot of people do not like him under any circumstances, but he just flew a 30-hour mission and took out a nuke site.
Yeah.
So we need somebody like that with any kind of something, because the guy you're talking about, Putin, power is the only thing he's going to understand.
Well, true. Your whole career from early 20s to now is totally espionage, KGB, the black arts.
Yeah.
He's a dangerous person. He's, oh my goodness, I mean, it's so obvious. He's this one general from this private army that he had at the beginning of the Ukraine war, the Wagner group. He had a disagreement with him, and he blew up the general's plane.
Yeah.
Right. He'll take out anybody.
He's not about coming to places like the United Kingdom and assassinating someone he doesn't like from his country.
All of his money is in, and he's like probably close to Musk in value. It's stashed away though in places where he can't really stash it there in Russia.
Right.
So he's got it stashed away, and probably Trump knows where it's at. So if there's any control over him, it'll be, he wants his million someday. He's pretty young, and he thinks he's going to live to 180 because of organ transplants. So he's going to worry about his money. The only way to get to him is to lock that money up so he can't get it, and it's somewhere.
Well, it's a intractable situation with Ukraine, because that was once an independent country, then it was part of Russia, part of the Soviet Union, occupied by the Germans. They had some war crime issues with Ukrainians working for the gas chambers and that type of thing. The Russians do not like Ukrainians generally. I don't know. I mean, this is a domestic dispute, kind of like the kind which I've never seen, because I don't know how you're going to stop it. We have no treaty obligations with Ukraine. They're not part of NATO. They can't call on us. I have this friend in France, and he's a little know-it-all. When this whole thing started, why don't you do something? Why don't we do something? Why don't you do something? You're closer than we are. We have no treaty obligation. The only thing we have really is NATO, which is a lot, and more members.
You know what Jeff
I don't know how it's going to stand.
Jeff and I both know right now is this. He knows more than I do, I guarantee it. But we're in more trouble sitting here right now than we were during the Cuban Missile Crisis. We are. That's how blinky close we are. And if somebody doesn't blink in the next 6 months or something, it's going to get real bad. Because Trump has the temper to do something. Well, when he goes into that world, it's not like going off to Iran. It's going to be, we're going up against our #1 geographic enemy. Like you said, the Chinese will be fine, usually. They're thoughtful. They run by committee still, but not Russia. He understands it, one man. That one guy on one day, and We're worse than the Cuban Missile Crisis. But you go out there today, go over to Brunel and go to a history class, they have no clue. They're just not getting it.